Hi everyone and welcome to Rage Print. This is Andy and this is a rather chilly December day in the garage. I'm slowly freezing while I continue working on Chopper. Today we're going to be doing his head rotation, so we can do this, and his head tilt, so you can do the rather characteristic. Yeah, I am slowly going mad. So yeah, it involves motors, gears, servos, screws. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, and magnets. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong with magnets? Why don't you join me and find out? So here we are. We start off with Lazy Susan. This is one I purchased off Amazon. Honestly, can't remember the brands. It'll probably change next week anyway. She needs to remove the rubber bungs on both sides. And it's very easy to do with a pair of pliers. So as I said, remove on both sides. The holes inside are not drilled all the way through. And you will need to drill these through, and I'll explain that in a minute. Yeah, that's the bungs removed. And we'll now switch to a video about the Lazy Susans. Right, something I'm quickly filming here, because I'm going to do this off camera, is the Lazy Susan. So this is the Lazy Susan. These holes here have the rubber bungs in. In fact, so do the other side on the inner track. As you see, the inner track has countersink. I need to countersink the outer holes as well. But first, we need to make sure that the holes line up. Now, Mike's instructions have written a lot about this already, about resizing the ring to make sure your holes line up. So I don't know how we're going to be able to see this if I just line the hole up. Bear with me a second. Where's the hole? There's the hole. Right, there we go. So if I lift it up very slightly, can you just about see a bit of green through there? Just there you go, bit of green. So that bit lines up, which means this bit should line up. Line it up a bit more. So you should see there's some red. We still see some green through there. Probably not. I can just about still see some green. You might not be able to see it on camera, but it is there. And then the final hole here. So as you can see, it looks like it's slightly further out. So if we just nudge it. So this is where Mike's talking about the fact that there's no standard for Lazy Susans. So you kind of need to nudge it so that they all line up, and then work out how far off you are. Now it looks like I'm not that far off overall. Really, I could probably get away with just using this as it is. I mean, yeah, bit of finagling, and that would work. It's literally millimeters off. Sorry about the bad camera work here, but So anyway, so these holes, these three holes here, zoom out a bit. These three holes here, they're going to be attached to here. Then you've got these bits. As you see, there's already a lot of holes in them. They actually go on the outer track. Now, I'm still trying to work this out myself. So here we go, I've lined it up. So there's one hole there, and one hole, just very slightly back in track. There we go. So yeah, I've got in the light one there, and sorry, get my shadow out of the way, and there as well. So it doesn't look like these two are required, and then the bearing would go there, which then plugs into there. So it looks like I'm okay in terms of the whole location overall. But what I do need to do is obviously drill through these holes, and I might as well do all 6 of them. Is it 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I might as well do all 6 of them. And I need to drill all the way through. Now, it's only aluminium, he says. It'd be better if I had a drill press. I might borrow John's drill press. If not, it's just getting the drill out and the compact drill and ray slowly drilling through while trying to keep as straight as possible. Luckily, these holes are already quite deep, so it should stop some wandering. But anyway, yeah, so that would look like that. And then the other side will be there. It did say to countersink them, but actually looking at the printed parts, they're already countersunk, so I'm not quite sure why I'd need to countersink the outer track. So I'll have another read about that and work out why. Yeah, effectively what we end up with is that. Yeah, and then the slip ring goes through between these two pieces. There is another piece that goes between them, some chopper somewhere. Yeah, so that's what we're going to end up with. As I said, I'm going to drill these holes off camera, mainly because it's going to take me a while, I imagine, using a compact drill. And then we'll get back to the build. Yeah. So, see you in a minute. Right, so here we go. All the holes are drilled and countersunk on the same side as the original countersink. I still have no idea why these need countersinking when the bit going on top of them is already countersunk. But regardless, I've done it just in case. Something I noticed when taking the masking tape off, it seems to peel the metal off. It's almost like someone sprayed it silver, and I just peeled the silver tape, the paint off. But anyway, so yeah, as you can see, the hole is drilled all the way through. I'm going to give those a quick sand on this side. But yeah, that's ready to go. That took me, what, 20 minutes? So it didn't take long at all, and that's just with a Bosch, electric drill. So there you go. Yeah, back to the proper build video. So, first things first, we're going to start off with the Susan tilt servo bracket. This will bolt onto the support frame. Show you in a second. Okay. Right, bolts onto this side of the chopper, and that bit goes at the bottom, and that sits about 5mm down from the top of the bracket. I'll show you on the camera now. Right, really dodgy camera work. So it sits on that side, and so I get my thumb out of the way, about that far down. The holes will line up so you know you're at the right point. So we need some M3x10 countersink screws, and some M3 nuts. And then one in each of these holes, and just screw them down to the just poking out of the other side. Yeah, just like that. That should help you line up the holes. And then you'll probably find this a lot easier doing it yourself because you're not trying to do it to a camera. And yeah, I find that small screw bit helps rather than using a whole screwdriver, because it's just the angle of the chopper at that point. So just screw them both in, put the nut on the back, both sides, and then we need the servo. And this is an MG996R, if it'll get in focus. I don't think it ever goes into focus. Anyway, it's an MG996R. and that slots in that way up. So the wire's poking out the top. And just slots in nicely like that. And then you use the screws that come with the servo. Yeah, so it just sits in like that. So the servo horn itself is at the top, and the screws that come with the servo screw into those 4 holes there. The wire coming out the top as well. Yep. And they're just really easy to screw in because these are actually self-tapping screws. So they screw into the plastic. Unlike the countersunk bolts that I use, that you have to kind of turn them into self-tapping screws. Yeah, that's it. And then next up, you need some 6800 2RS bearings. But those are not 6800 2RS bearings, as you'll see in a second. And they go in there, and there, and those ones don't fit. That's when I realised I read its bearings wrong, and I don't actually have the 6800 2RSs. So I ordered some. So while I was waiting for that, we work on the Lazy Susan itself. So we've got the 2 brackets. This is the rear bracket, because you can see you've got those 2 dimples. And then that's the front bracket, no dimples. So start with the front bracket. And that attaches with some M4x12 countersunk screws and 2 M4 nuts, X nuts, and they screw from the top down into the Lazy Susan. So don't use the M4x12. I found they weren't long enough, so I actually used. I didn't actually measure these. I think these are 20s. So the M4x20s. So that then pops out enough at the countersink on the other side for you to screw them in. So yeah, even with the countersink, it just wasn't long enough. And say they just. Yeah, there you go. Goes there, just screws in. So even though I said that they were the holes for the brackets were quite close to the Lazy Susan holes, I found with these I had to almost sort of pull the brackets apart slightly because it's just literally half a mil away. And eventually they go in. You can see that I'm sort of pushing the bracket to place, just trying to get the screw into place. That effectively my brackets are now held under pressure and tension. Sure, that won't cause me any issues in the future. And I've also switched to hex bolts. That's all I had in that size. So there we go. Bolts on the countersink side, screws in from that side, and then you've got the inner track moves separately to the bracket itself. Now you don't put the rear bearing on yet. Now we're going to work on the gear ring. So I'm just checking with my Dremel that the holes for the magnets are big enough. Luckily, on my Dremel, the smaller sanding disc tube is just the right size to fit in there and widen it out enough to accept the magnets. So you need some 10x5 rare earth magnets. I'm just checking they fit in okay. You only need 6. The other holes are for the locating sockets on the dome. What do you call them? Dome brackets. Yeah. So you see here, I'm just double checking that the magnets can go in. I want them snug, but not enough that I can't get back out if I need to. Yeah. So we go 10x5 N52 neodymiums. Some good old 2-part epoxy. And you'll have to refer to the PDF here, although I do point it out on here. In fact, I lie the Lazy Susan and the bracket, the gear ring, to match the picture on Mike's PDF, so I can work out where. So one magnet there. Quite sure what I was trying to show you there, but yeah, one magnet there, one there, one there, one there. You can see the pattern. One there and one there. Make sure you get that right, because otherwise when you come to put the brackets in, the dome brackets, they won't work. So I'm just filing off where I've been sanding. Double checking the fitment of the magnets. And something I started doing, marking the top of the magnet, so I know that, in this case, which way north is. I don't know if it's north, might be south, but at least I know they're all the same way round. So mix up some 2-part epoxy and just pop it into the hole. Make sure you put it in the right holes. So I was doing 2 at a time. I didn't want to mix too much epoxy up because it starts to set quickly. Just for me, in my case, 2 holes at a time, get the magnets in, start mixing the next set of epoxy up. And I really need to find a better way of using the lollipop stick. So in this case, I'm putting the marked side of the magnet up, if I can separate it. So marked side is up, and then on the corresponding dome brackets, marked side would be inside the bracket, making sure that I got them the right way around. You see. And as I pick the magnet off, I'm marking the next one off, so I know that if I put the magnets down, for whatever reason, I'm not, losing it. I really should have worn some epoxy gloves. Some nitrile gloves when using the epoxy. I'll remember one day. Just a final mark of the magnet, so when I pick them up in 2 days' time. There we go. That's 6 magnets with the marked side up. And then I'll just leave that to dry. So I'm just double checking the holes, because I suddenly realised that there's more holes in the gearing than I have on the Lazy Susan. As at this point, I forgot to cut through drill some holes. So M3 times 20 countersunk bolts with some M3 nuts. Yeah, this is where I realised that I haven't drilled all the holes out. And actually maybe the countersinks should be on the other side. Yeah, this is where I swapped the countersinks over. I realised the countersink should be on the bottom. I ended up using longer screws going back into the Susan bracket. So this is now, there'll be 25 mils. To accommodate the fact there's now no longer a countersink on the other side. This is where I was looking at the picture of Mike's on Mike's PDF and realised that there's actually a space for in the gearing for the nuts. So actually the countersink doesn't matter, which means the countersinks need to be on the other side. That's the important side. So there we go. Countersinks on that side, with the nut sitting proud of the Lazy Susan. Right, back to gearing. This is where I realised the holes aren't there. Yeah, so I've drilled the holes. Totally didn't forget there were extra holes there, honest. So we say it's M3 times 20, and they pop through from the bottom side. Yeah. There we go, this is where... So this is what I did when I drilled the holes out originally. Put some masking tape. And now, oh yeah, drilled the holes and now countersinking them. So everything's countersunk on the inner track. And then even though it's 4 times speed, you can tell it's not really taking long to countersink it. A couple of minutes. Put a bit more tape down just to make sure the dust doesn't get into the bearings. Don't know why I was having trouble with that one. Anyway, back to the gearing. So now the countersunk, the bolts, this countersunk on the other side, we can put the bolts through. So line the holes up, put the bolts through, and then put a nut on the top. And just tighten up. And repeat that 6 times. See, so the bolt sits proud of the Lazy Susan, and then the actual bolt sits is countersunk. I said just repeat that 6 times. There we go. Gearing is now moving independently of the Lazy Susan bracket. Just point out the bolts are going on the inner track. So now we start on the head tilt itself. So this is the servo horn cap, Susan servo horn, and then the horn that comes with the servo sits in there. 2-part epoxy. Use a lot more than I use here, as you'll see later on in the video. I didn't use enough. Yeah, just put that in, let that dry. Next step is you want some M3 times 20s. 2 of them. So you got one that goes into there. That way around. And then that slots. So what I'm showing you now is wrong. I'll change it later. In fact, this bit is right. So it goes that way round. And you have to self-tap through. And then you create a nice hinge point. I go a little bit further so I can get enough of the bolt coming through to put a nut on the end. You don't have to. And I might swap this out for a nylock nut. But there you go, you create a hinge point on this side. And then this bit, which will connect to the gearing. So what I'm telling you now is, this is the bit I'm telling you is wrong. It should be on the other side. So it should be on the same side as the servo horn. Right, and again, self-tapping all the way through the plastic. That just slots on like that, but on the other side of the hinge point. And again, I kept going until there was enough of the bolt showing through on the other side, which meant I was actually cutting through the plastic of the bracket mount, just so I can put a bolt on the end, nut on the end. There you go, you get that joint. So just imagine that gear mount is actually on the other side. So those are the bearings that I needed originally. They finally arrived. So they just pop into there. You might need to glue them so they don't fall out. So a bit of super glue would be all right in this case. It was fairly well friction fit. There was just not quite enough of friction fit, so it sort of moved and slid out. The super glue was enough just to create a bit of a bond. I was thinking about putting epoxy, but I don't want to put too much epoxy and then find that I've sealed the bearing, so it wasn't going to turn at all. So put the reverse bearing, the rear lazy Susan bracket in. Might need to sand the hole slightly, sand the peg slightly so it fits in the hole. And just double checking that the other peg fits as well. Yeah. Also be careful not to pull the bearing out, which I've just glued in. Yeah. So the rear bracket fits in, and you can see why now there's two dimples in the rear bracket. It's to accommodate to the nuts on the rear part of chopper's frame. So just checking it fits okay, and also that I've put the screws through enough on the rear Susan bracket. It's a mouthful, because I'm not going to be able to get a screwdriver in to do them up. So push them all the way through. There we go. So now fully all the way through the rear Susan bracket, because you will not get a screwdriver there at all. Right, so you fit the rear bracket in, and then you fit the front bracket in like that. And that should just push in, and then we'll rest on the rear bracket as well. So something I haven't videoed is in the bottom left of the gearing, just underneath my finger, there's a little hole that I drilled out, and that's so you can get to these nuts. And they're M4 nuts. M4 square nuts in this case. So you can see so you can get to the nut inside. Mike does have it on his drawing, on his pictures as well on the PDF, but I don't think he actually even mentions it on there either. I just noticed he had a picture with this hole drilled into the gearing. It's like, oh, that's how you do it. So you get the one bolt in, and then slide the Susan around so you find the other bolt, and then repeat with the other M4 square nut. And using a bore drill here just to get it going, just to turn it around, and then finish off with a pair of pliers. So when I cut the hole, it was a M10 hole. You might want to go a bit bigger. But there we go. So that's it. It's now, that's the head wobble. There's no servo attached to it, but that is the head wobble. And I must say, it looks pretty good. So now we attach the tilt servo. So that goes on there and just screws in using the screw that came with the servo itself. Something you might want to do before you do this is center the servo using a servo tester. I do this a bit later, suddenly realised I hadn't done it. And this is where I realised I put the bracket on back to front. As you're thinking, oh, it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. Why is it not fit? What have I done wrong? Is the horn too long? And I realised, looking at the picture, it's back to front. So that bit needs to go on that side. And quick as a flash, it's back around on the right side. There we go. That goes on there. You also need another M4 bolt to go in through the Susan horn. I don't actually know what this is called. The gearing bracket? The white bit I just turned around anyway. You need an M4 bolt to go through there. And you should find a hole that lines up. This is where I realised how do you attach it. And I realised, there's another hole that I need to put in. So take it off again. There you go. So feed the bolt through. To stop the bolt falling out, I stuck it in with a bit of tape, a bit of sticky tape, with enough of a tab that I could just pull the tape off. So like the other pieces, this was doing an M4 times 12. And same as before, move the gear around so you've got the hole showing. Try not to drop the M4 nut in the process. And then just same as the rear Susan brackets, just screw it on. Do it up as tight as you can. Pull the tape off, and once you're happy, reattach the servo horn back to the servo. As you can imagine, by this point I've probably wrecked the servo horn because I've been taking it off, turning it, taking it off, turning it up, and I think that causes the issues I have later at the end of the video that you'll see. But there we go, got a servo controlled head tilt. So now we start with the motor. So this is a Pololo. No chance I'm going to be able to say that. Pololo. It's a 50 to 1 ratio 12 volt motor without an encoder. And we just need some electrical cable. I took a guess at how long it's going to be. That's way longer than I need, but I'd rather have it too long than find out to splice in some extra wire later. It's the first time I used these. These are wire strippers. Much easier. Don't know why I didn't buy them years ago. Anyway. So solder the wires to the end of the motor. I was having a lot of trouble with this solder. Yeah. So the wires go through there. It doesn't matter which way around. I mean, in all honesty, you could probably use electrical cable that's blue, you know, red, yellow, whatever. Both wires, doesn't matter. But just put them through like that. Make sure you put the heat shrink on before you attach them to the motor. Not saying I didn't do that. You can see here I swapped solder. Don't know if it's because it's just so cold in the garage at the time I was doing this. I was just having so much trouble getting the solder to actually do anything, and then use this stuff, which I've had for years. It just works straight away. This is the stuff on the white reels, lead solder. I think the one in the blue tube is whatever, I don't know, cheap solder. Put the heat shrink on. Oh yeah, test the motor first. Test the motor first, because you don't want to heat shrink it and find the motors don't work. So just grab a little LiPo battery and that jump. There you go, you can just see the motor turn in there. And now I can heat shrink, because I know the motor works. I haven't broken it. I'm just contemplating my life here. Oh no, I know what's doing. I was watching Lost in Space. Right. Yeah, so is the camera getting into focus for me? Heat shrink the solder on. Sorry. Put the heat shrink on. And then we need to attach the motor bracket. So use that solder, not the cheapy solder. Motor bracket. That faces inside a chopper. So just thread the motor through. And it shouldn't sit like that, it needs to sit flush. Again, that's the front, that sits inside the chopper. I realised my mistake in a second. So N3 times 12, just screw them into the, to sort of close it up, close the bracket up, and some N3 nuts. I think it even says in the instructions here, reading it now, the motor is level with the top, which is what I do there. Eventually I realise what I've done. So motor should be level with the top like that, and then you can put the N3 nuts in to hold it in place. Mike does say to leave some slack in the bolts so you can rotate the motor, but I found there's no way I was going to be able to move that motor even without the bolts in. So, there you go, 3 bolts. So you might find you need a bit of force to twist that motor inside the bracket so it meshes with the gear. So the dome gear meshes with the motor gear. So the bracket will go on like that. So this is the gear, motor gear. So N3 square nuts. And one N3 square nut just pops into the little hole inside the motor gear. It's N315. I've only got N314s, but N315s. And then that kind of becomes your grub screw to hold the gear to the motor. God, my camera really doesn't like focusing on white, does it? There you go. N3 nut in there. That just pops on. I leave a bit of a gap between the bottom of the motor and the. I actually went onto chopper and measured it and made sure how high I needed to be off the top of the motor. And then just screw it on so it doesn't move. Easy. So now we're back to chopper. This is what I should have done earlier, which is center the servo. Use a little LiPo. It's a servo test I've had for years, but this is an Amazon job, quite cheap. And it's served me well for years. I've got 2 of them actually. So just set it to 1500, or as close as you can get it to. There you go. Yeah, set to 1500, and then that is center for the servo. And then what I need to do in this case, though if you've done it properly the first time around you wouldn't need to, is undo the screw on the servo horn again, level out the gear, and then reattach the servo horn so I know that center is chopper's head is level, it's not tilted in any way. Just screw it back on. And then we attach the dome motor. You can see here I'd attach the bracket to the motor. I don't know why I did that because I'd have to remove the screws anyway. So 4 screws there, 8 screws there. So those 4 I need to come out and then put them back in there. I said I don't know why I did that. I think I was getting tired the night before when I did this. So I drilled the holes out a bit more for M3. Yeah, M3. And I broke my drill bit. You see where I've marked it black? My drill bit broke in there. Just there. Snapped it. Let's get some more drill bits. So I drilled these out for M3. See if you can spot my mistake in drilling M3 for M3 bolts when there's no place to put the nuts. Yeah, they just slide straight through. So I drill them out to 3.5 and change them for M4 nuts. And these are now M4 by 15s rather than M3 by 15s. So now they're drilled to M3.5, I can self-tap the screws in. And attach the bracket. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you screwing 12 screws in real sped up time. We're going to cut. There we go. The camera can't show you. I'm doing the same thing on the back as in the other 4 screws in there. And these are the back 4 screws. And then we'll attach the motor bracket in a second. Oh no, I had to drill out the holes, didn't I? Yeah, I forgot to drill out the holes on the motor bracket. On the crossbar, sorry. Without drilling into my fingers. Right. Now we can add the screws in. So I am actually attaching the motor bracket now. I thought I did it the other way around. Yeah, ignore that. It's not that one. It's not that one. It's that one. So we fit the motor bracket and try and mesh the gear up as much as we can, and then put the 4 screws in at the front. That's now attaching the crossbar to the motor bracket to the rear Susan bearing. Should be all that's an all tight. That's final tighten, just trying to get it all level in the process. There we go. And then just put the last 4 in. I put a normal screw in just to get it in place, and then put the other 4 in, the other 3 in. and take that screw back out and replace it with a hex screw. And I finally did decide to put another screw in there, and it was a really short M4, and I think it's an M4 times 5, just so there's something holding it to the plastic. It's just long enough that it actually hits the broken drill bit stuck in the plastic. And now we're going to test the motor. There you go, and that's only moving at 6 volts. Little 6 volt LiPo, 7 volt LiPo. Yeah, moving back and forth, and all I'm doing is just changing the polarity that's coming out of the battery. So yeah, that looks fine. So we need some M3 times 25s. And that's to attach the slip ring adapter. So it might just say to use it M3 times 20. It wasn't quite long enough, I found. So M325, and there's just 2 of those. One on each side of the slip ring holder. So the slip ring I got here is a 6-wire slip ring, and I got it from Pi Hut, if I remember right. So that just lines up. Yeah, definitely do the bit I'm doing now. Yeah, attach the slip ring to the crossbar before you attach it to the Susan brackets. I made my job so much harder doing it this way around. So M5 times 10s, and that just attaches the slip ring to the slip ring adapter. You can see where I'm having trouble. If I'd done this bit before attaching the crossbar to the Susan bracket, it would have been a hell of a lot easier. So I'm just drilling the holes out a bit, and I'm not drilling out as M5, I'm drilling out as M4, and then just screw them in. I was lucky in the fact that the crossbar, the gearing, bent enough. There we go. So we've got a tilt. Oh, I can already see the Susan going there on the servo horn going. So we've got, and now we're starting the dome. All I'm doing here is just adding the dome connectors. And 6 of those. And you want some M3 square nuts going in there. Dome locks. Dome brackets, dome locks. You want some 10 by 5 N52 magnets, the same ones we used on the gear ring. And unlike before, so 6 of those. Unlike before, we want the marked side going into the bit of plastic. And it's very hard to screw this up because there's only one hole you can put the magnet in. So, mark, in this case, mark side down. Like that. And mark the magnets so you don't forget which way around they are. It's me faffing around with epoxy. And that's all 6 done. So I left that to dry overnight because I used quite a lot of epoxy in there. And then the next day, they're dry. So nice and dry. And we use some M3 times 10s. And the 20s will go through into the dome itself. So the 10s screw into these little nodules here. And the little tabs. Just gives us a bit more strength to the tab because over time they're going to wear out. And that'll go in the other locating hole in the dome ring. If my camera will focus on white again. Let's just start printing in black. So just repeat that 6 times. Again, it's tapping in, so it can take a bit of effort. So they're done. Out of the way. 1 dome. So you've got the M3 square nuts already in there. And these are the M3 times, what were they? 20s? 20s. And they'll push through from there. So first of all, put the dome lock in. So just start it off through the dome lock. Oh yeah, put the M3 square nuts back in, they kept falling out. Just try and get the camera to focus on it. I'm going to turn autofocus off. There we go. See that little hole it slides into that I was pointing out? Now let's use a bore drill to go through the sacrificial layer and then just screw through. Yeah, just screw through the dome lock and through into the dome itself. It should tighten up. I found this one stayed wobbly. The others were fine. Yeah, as I said, you're tapping through 2 bits of plastic, so it's not the easiest angle to try and screw through into. So repeat, M3 nut, bore draw it through, and just screw through so it's tight. See, that one's tighter. Just repeat another 6 times. Well, 5 times, 4 times in this case. So I should point out this episode was done over about 5 different evenings / afternoons, over about 2 weeks. Had to wait for the bearings to turn up. So there's points I've forgotten what I actually did until I've rewatched the video or re-edited the video. Yeah, if I hadn't missed those bearings, probably would have done this a lot quicker. So here we go. There's Chopper. And we're in the home stretch now. So we put Chopper's head on, and the dome locks will locate with the parts of the lazy suit on the gearing. And then the magnets will attach, and he's locked in place. There we go. Just quite happy turning his head. And this is where I realised the head tilt servo had come loose. Yeah, it was wobbling, but there was no sort of whir from the gear. It's like, that's not right. So take the head off, take the Susan horn off. I find that the Susan horn is, sorry, the servo horn is just wrecked. So I get a clean one out, some more epoxy. Yeah, there's a new servo horn. I'll just put a lot more epoxy onto it. Unfortunately, most of this is off camera, which doesn't help you. And then just reattach the servo. And then leave it to dry overnight. Just tidy it, and that's it. We are done. One Susan tilt. Well, that wasn't too bad, was it? So as you can see, tilt the right way. There's Chopper. I haven't put his head back on because as you saw at the end of the video, the servo horn had come away from the servo cap for the head tilt. That's currently drying now. I don't want to put any weight on it because otherwise the servo horn is going to move within the cap. I'm going to let that epoxy dry. It's cold in here, it's going to take a while to dry. I'm going to put the head back on. Actually, that went remarkably well, apart from accidentally drilling the screws out, the screw holes out on the dome the dome motor bracket for M3 rather than 2.5, so I had something to bite into. Yeah, that went fine. If anything, I probably made it a bit stronger. I'm going to put M4s in. Yeah, let's go with that. I made it stronger. Yeah, I mean, the magnets, I think I finally got into a rhythm with the magnets, marking the top one, so I know that for whatever reason, if I put it down, walk away, the kids come in and pick it up and turn it over, although God knows why they'd ever be picking those magnets up, but you never know. I know that was the top, and therefore carry on in that order going around, and then for the other side, flip them over. Work well. Until you get resin on the last magnet, if you're trying to push them apart, and the resin rubs the Sharpie off. Bear that in mind. Sharpie and resin don't mix; they will rub each other off. So yeah, apart from waiting for that resin to dry, sorry, the epoxy resin, the head's done. I can put power into the motor. I can turn the head. I can put power into the servo and make the servo tilt back and forth. Using little servo tester, and I really bodged together power control. I do have a proper power adapter for this, but I couldn't find it. Anyway, neither here nor there. One thing I will mention, I might have mentioned it in the voiceover or not, is when you come to do the slip ring, I would put the slip ring in before you bolt the bracket to the Lazy Susan brackets, rather than trying to slip it in under the gear crossbar. I know the instructions say to do it that way around, but actually I was quite lucky and I could bend the crossbar enough, and if you put more walls on or thicker infill, it's not going to bend so much. So do it that way around. Put the slip ring and its adapter onto the crossbar before the crossbar is bolted to the Lazy Susan brackets. Also, and I probably did mention this, in fact I will have mentioned this, you need longer screws than Mike's instructions says. Only by about 5mm. And that's for the screws that go down through the crossbar, through the crossbar, through the Lazy Susan bracket, and into the motor bracket. They're not quite long enough, just a few more mil. And also for the slip ring adapter as well. I ended up using M25s. And that was more than enough to get a nut on the bottom. And there was another part where the screws weren't quite long enough. I can't think what it is. It would have been in voiceover. So yeah, I was really hoping to have the periscope built as well before Christmas. As of today, it's the 10th of December. I might be able to get the periscope built. I can try. Certainly won't be out before Christmas anyway, the video. But yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. It's when I put that gear on and got the motor running, and I did the test of the servo, and I just saw the gear doing this on Chopper's body. I already sort of thought, that's Chopper. That's the snarky, sarcastic, the sort of sullen teenager type thing that he does, or grumpy old man, I suppose. Just all of a sudden he was alive, even though he had no head on. He was alive, so I'm pleased that I'm getting closer. So something I have been thinking about is, originally when I started this build, I was going to be putting in Padawan 360, which is the Xbox controller version. So this is R2's. However, I've been looking more and more into the Kyber system that Matt Hobbs has been working on and advertising and pushing on. That gives the same abilities as the Xbox. You many buttons to set off all the different sound banks and animations, but using an RC controller. So I'm not going to get too much into it. I might put a link in the description if I remember. But yeah, RC controller. So you effectively only have a few buttons to be able to do something. That limits what you can do. And most R2 builders have like a little thing Velcro to the side. It's like a sound bank button, and that'll be set off a separate sound bank in the droid. that's where Padawan came along. Because all of a sudden you've got the combo buttons of the Xbox. The downside of Padawan is, or even Shadow, is that the Xbox and PlayStation frequencies get interfered with by anything. So I did a wedding with R2 a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, and there was so much interference from phones, the cameras, the PA system, that R2 got halfway up the aisle and stopped, with the bride and groom right behind him. Yeah. So there's me running up to the front. So I'm on all those wedding videos, and I feel really guilty for doing it. But he was stuck. He was stopped. He wasn't moving. The rest of the stormtroopers that were with us ended up filing around him and then filing up to the side, and bride and groom ended up walking around him. I had to sort of push him up to the front. Yeah. So anyway, it's things like that. It's happened several times at a science festival. I did same problem. So I'm looking more and more at Kyber. Gives me the same ability as Padawan, but with the reliability of RC. I'm not there yet. A lot of the components are exactly the same. It's just the brains change. So instead of an Arduino, it'll be this little custom box that Matt sends out, which admittedly has an Arduino in it, and has an ESP32 from memory. Has the soundboard, has a Bluetooth, has Wi-Fi. It's only a little box about the size of a Mega, actually, an Arduino Mega. So be a little bit bigger than that. There's everything you need, and then all you do is you plug the RC receiver into it, and then from the RC receiver you send power to the motor controllers. That's it. It's a lot less wiring than currently in R2. There's wires everywhere for powering everything. So yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that one. I need a new RC transmitter. That one's not got enough channels to even use Kyber. So yeah. So we'll see about that. So I might end up going Kyber on that one. Also, I might end up doing Kyber on BB-8. I'm going to start picking BB-8 up again. I've been printing bits, so we will start seeing some videos on BB-8 at some point. I've got the kind of bug to get BB-8 going now that Chopper's starting to look like Chopper. I want to get BB-8 back together and looking like BB-8 again, because he was working to a degree. But anyway, that's me rambling on for 8.5 minutes. Thank you very much for bearing with me for this long. And have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Stay safe, everyone. And I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.